There are millions of vegetarians in the United States today, and I am no longer one of them. I spent my entire life as a vegetarian. My parents raised me vegetarian, and as soon as I could decide for myself, I was vegetarian. My main motivation was that I didn't want an animal to die so that I could eat it. So from a young age, I was avoiding everything from fish to leather to gelatin. Anything that involved an animal's death, I wanted no part of. I remember when I was about 8 years old, I discovered that marshmallows and gummy bears contain gelatin, which is a big no-no for ethical vegetarians. And even from that age, I was so committed to the idea of being vegetarian and doing no harm to animals that I immediately cut out some of my favorite sweets. And then when I was a teenager, I came across a vegan documentary on Netflix, and those will get you. You watch them late at night and you're like, I am all about protecting animals. I'm going vegan tomorrow morning, like it's happening. And after that, I would say I had an even deeper concern for animal welfare to the point where I was vegan for a few years. This meant that I further restricted myself in terms of not eating dairy or eggs, anything from an animal where I didn't know it was well taken care of. I think one of the big ways that I would identify myself, like when I was meeting new people, for example, was to explain that I was vegetarian, and it was never something that I pushed onto other people. I only talked about it really when it came up in terms of going out to eat, for example. So I never tried to push my beliefs about being vegetarian on other people, because growing up, a lot of people tried to get me to eat meat, and even to the point where they were waving meat like right in my face. It's like, dude, that's gross, stop. So I never wanted to be that person to someone else. But at the same time, it was still something that I would tell people, like, hey, this is me, this is who I am. I could never ever imagine eating meat. That was not a possibility in my lifetime. If you had asked me just a few years ago, it would not have been a consideration. I would say that I was a vegetarian through and through from birth to death. That was me. And then a couple years ago, I met some people who pushed back on my beliefs. They brought up different concerns that I'd never really given any deep thought to before. You know, they were asking things like, hey, you know, you're eating a higher carb diet. You know, do you think that's really the healthiest thing for you? You have fewer options for complete and nutrient-dense proteins as a vegetarian compared to someone who eats animal proteins, where those are going to be complete. They also brought up the concern about phytoestrogens from soy and other plant products and how those can interrupt and mess with your estrogen production. And, you know, messing with hormones, that's pretty scary stuff. And I never really thought about it in the long term in terms of what is my life gonna be like down the road. And so my friends would say that overall, because you're vegetarian, you may not be getting all of the nutrients that you need, which means you would need to supplement. The problem there is that means you would no longer be eating nature's food. You would be eating some warped version of food and nutrients. But my answer was always, I do it for the animals. If it's maybe not that healthy, then that's okay. I don't care. But over time, I kept hearing from people who were ex-vegan and ex-vegetarian who really found that eating meat was giving them energy. They felt better. There was this one lady that I know who actually experienced hair loss when she went vegetarian. And then when she reverted back to eating meat, she said her hair started growing out longer and thicker and fuller, overall looking healthier. And I never even considered that your diet would affect things like that. So little by little, my resolve, my belief in vegetarianism started to wane. But I'd say the real first chink in my armor was vegan leather. Like I mentioned earlier, I was committed to it. I wouldn't wear leather, so I would instead buy vegan leather or pleather. But then there was the thought of, okay, so where does vegan leather come from? And it turns out it's plastic. And then you work through what plastic is doing to our environment, and it made me wonder how many animals end up dying so that we can have vegan material. I felt really lied to by the vegan and vegetarian community, because this whole time I thought I was helping save animals. I thought I was doing the good thing, but I may have actually been doing more harm than good. So I did start buying leather products. I tried to go for the most natural products I could get my hands on and afford at the time. And I think that this was really the gateway to eating meat. Around the same time, I was learning about female fertility, and I came across some concerning things. For example, what happens if you raise a child on soy-based products? Like, what if the phytoestrogens affect the child's development during pregnancy, or even like pre-puberty? What do I do about that? It's not even about my being vegetarian at that point. It's, you know, if I raised my kids vegetarian, what would it do to them? I had all of these new questions and concerns, so I did what most people do, and I turned to the internet. Right off the bat, I found evidence that I should totally eat meat for sure. There were a number of proponents of the carnivore diet. There were hormone specialists, dietitians saying, yeah, meat's really good for you. You really need it. Then I Googled if it's better to be vegetarian, and I found medical articles and influencers saying meat is horrible for you. You're gonna die younger, and you're gonna get all of these diseases if you eat meat, so do not eat meat. Like, what do you do when either side is saying it's terrible for you, do my thing instead? So I decided to talk to some people around me, people who espoused vegan, paleo, keto, fruitarian. Everyone could point to a study or some source or reasoning and logic as to prove that their diet was the best for you. So just like online, all this advice I got in person completely contradicted one another. Everyone claimed that their diet was the best, literally opposite diets. This was literally the weirdest position I'd ever been in. Usually everything has an answer and I know exactly what I'm supposed to do. What do you do when there's no clear-cut answer? What's the way forward from that? And you know, this is something I thought about a lot. It had me wondering, you know, if no one knows what the best diet is, what's the healthiest lifestyle I can work toward? I think a lot of that came down to what is natural. As humans, we keep changing all the things in our environment and our diet, and we don't really know what the outcome is going to be. From what I can tell, we evolved to eat meat and evolved by eating meat. Throughout time, humans ate whatever they could get their hands on, and it seems like a big part of that was animal protein. So if I wanted to live most in tune with nature and what we know about evolutionary biology, eating meat was the way to go. Yeah, that's the best answer I could come up with. At this point, it was time to make the decision. And of course, that is when all of the fears just came pouring in. Will I lose part of myself if I go through with this? Who am I? And even without all of these existential questions, I had some very real concerns about the physical side of eating meat. For example, I had heard that when you stop eating meat, your body loses some of its ability to digest it. And so what did that mean for someone like me? Was I gonna vomit? Was my stomach gonna hurt? And then there was the taste. Like, what if the taste was so bad that I couldn't get myself to keep eating it, and then I had broken my vow of vegetarianism of 20 plus years all for nothing? what do you do if your brain says to do one thing, but your heart just isn't in it? I am the kind of person who takes a really long time to make decisions, if you couldn't already tell that. One day I just woke up and I said, today's the day, this is it, it's happening. And that is how we got here.
This is my first time ever eating an animal, like, intentionally. Like, where I've actually, like, purposely chosen to.
Very brave of you.
It's a big thing.
This tastes better than I expected, for sure. No, it just ended up being a full-on carnivore.
So yay, it's done, it's all over, right? Not exactly. I made this huge leap forward, but the thoughts in the back of my head didn't go away. What happened was I did the unthinkable, and now all of this guilt and shame was just flooding my mind. So I stopped eating meat. But then the more logical side of me chimed back in saying, hey, we decided on this already. Keep going, keep going. I would like to tell you that the logical side of me won that day, but over the course of months, I flipped between eating meat and feeling this dread, this weight of, hey, an animal died so that you can eat this barbecue, so stop eating it. How do you deal with an identity crisis, right? Back when I did my no sugar challenge, I saw that my diet, what I'm putting into my body or not putting into my body, really does affect my well-being, which only made me wonder more, what if evolution got it right and I've been wrong this entire time? We don't have enough information out of science currently to say whether phytoestrogens are a problem or not. And similarly, we don't know if lab-made supplements are the way to go in order to make sure we're getting all of our nutrients while avoiding meat. But the risk of an unhealthy lifestyle was no longer worth staying vegetarian so that I could feel less guilty. Ultimately, I had to compartmentalize my feelings and redirect my focus onto why I was doing this. It's been nearly a year since I started this journey, and I wish I could tell you I found the answer to what we should be eating, but I have not. I can tell you that I feel more energized after eating more protein, especially more animal proteins, compared to eating mostly carbs. Protein has a pretty important role in keeping your body functioning and repairing itself. So for now, I am testing out an even higher protein intake. It's definitely not as appealing as carbs, but I do think that my body has been craving protein, and even more so since I started working out and lifting earlier this year. Overall, this personal experiment of sorts has been really interesting, and I still don't know if I made the right choice, to be really honest with you. I know that there are a lot of people online, various influencers, whether they're carnivore or vegan, vegetarian, and they all say, this is absolutely the only way to do it. You have to follow this diet. And I wish I could say with that level of certainty what we should be eating, but I can't right now. I'm still waiting for more definite answers. But when it comes to things like diet, there are so many variables that a study has to control in order to make anything close to a decent conclusion. And even then, there are so many variables to being human that we probably won't know for a while. Going forward, I did what I could with what I had, and sometimes I think that's the best that we get. I think there are times when we as leaders of our own lives have to make decisions that are just good enough. And that is where I'm at.